Hey folks, thanks for joining us again and welcome back to our channel. I wanted to talk about the United States of America's blunder in the country of Niger. Today, I want to examine the relationship between the US and Niger. More importantly, I will focus on the 100 million US dollars drone base in Algadez that has been dismantled, and Niger has asked the United States to get out of the country. It is important for us to understand the engagement and collaboration between how Africa's geopolitical partners engage Africa from a strategic point of view, but from the imperialistic approach, the paternalism, and the imposition of their own strategic options. So the relationship was going okay, but the United States started behaving as a hegemonic power and wanted to tell the country of Niger how to do things or how to get things done. So this was a big problem at the time. So a number of people will look at like, how can the United States leave Niger by looking at the investment? First, I want to talk about this relationship. Don't forget, the current United States of America Secretary of State, Anthony Blinken, once called Niger a model of cooperation, a model of democracy in the region. But I don't think that. Niger wasn't a democracy to an extent. Mohamed Bazoum at the time, if you consider his reign, there was nothing to write home about. So the United States of America failed to understand the cultural engagement, the strategic problem in the country. That's what I've been talking about, that these Africa's major geopolitical partners, they look at things from an extended lens. They fail to go down on the ground to understand the cultural engagement, the political systems, and how these countries come about to where they are today. Their colonial history, it's a lot going on in these countries. So the US decided that they want to engage, first of all, Niger, which is, don't forget, Niger is the largest country in the Sahel, the most strategic country in the Sahel region. Anywhere that Niger goes, things will happen. So the US failed to understand the importance of Niger, that this particular country, keep its size aside, but Niger has one of the military that have been battling jihadis for quite some time. But let me take a look at one after the other. But first, the US got it absolutely wrong in Niger. Why am I saying this? Because the relationship was based on collaboration, managing relationship, looking on how to work together to combat terrorism or to combat jihadis within the region. But the US took the relationship to a whole different level. Let's look at the drone base in Algadez. This was a 100 million US dollars investment in a country that, if you look at the GDP, if you look at the economy of Niger, it does have natural resources, but a number of people in the geopolitical circle will classify Niger as poor. But I don't think Niger is a poor nation. It's as a result of the bargain that these countries get into with their geopolitical partners. Just imagine, take a step back, a 100 million US dollar investment into Niger in the city of Algadez, talking about the drone base. This comes with AI, comes with surveillance, comes with engagement, comes with strategic focus, comes with counterterrorism equipment. It comes with surveillance to an extent that Niger would have never imagined. So 100 million US dollars is a massive investment. So for the United States of America to decide to take out this base, it tells you that the relationship wasn't working. Now, if a country like the United States can invest 100 million US dollars in a base in an African country, just imagine 100 million US dollars for the country of Niger is a huge amount of money. And I think it goes back to the issue of sovereignty that I've been talking about. If you have a major superpower like the United States planting a drone base in that country, therefore means the government in that country, to an extent, were puppets. They couldn't make decisions on their own. Their sovereignty was on the line, and they were being surveilled in a whole lot of other very important strategic things. The government cannot make their own decision. They cannot choose which partners to work with. This was a major problem. I've talked about strategic engagement, geopolitical arrangement. These countries in the continent of Africa were into this partnership and this relationship, just kind of a relationship of convenience. So this, just put it that way, right? But with time, as time goes on, these countries become worrying, and they wanted to do something new. They want to engage new partners. They want to look at the strategic option. They could look at the region. The economy was going down. The population, the people wanted something new. And with that particular drone base there, it appears as if Niger have been bought to an extent. So that particular investment was a major problem. The military there, the US trained a lot of Nigerian military and to keep them to a certain capacity. But experts will argue that drone base in Algadez did not meet up to its expectation because Niger continued to fight jihadis in that region. And even the drone base the US left, there are a lot of problems still going on. So it means the most important reason why the drone base was actually built was not accomplished. So let's put it straight. There was no accomplishment with regards to that. There were a few other surveillance success in one way or the other. But I think that the United States planting the drone base in the city of Algadez, in the country of Niger, was to an extent to show some force. Because don't forget, Niger is a strategic country in the Sahel region. And you have the Chinese, you have the Russians, you have the other geopolitical partners, the European Union, that are engaged in Niger. So that particular base staying there, not accomplishing the importance of the mission, it means the US planted that base to also project power and also let its other geopolitical partners to know that they have arrived. So this is a problem. So I think I've gone back to talk about why these geopolitical partners should understand that sovereignty cannot be mixed with collaboration. These are two separate things that must be separated. So the drone base was a big problem, but was never discussed. One very important area where Niger and the United States clashed was that the US wanted to impose its decision to the country of Niger. So with that part of that kind of relationship that have been for quite some time, quite some years, Mohamed Bazoum felt comfortable that he could go ahead and do things. He could travel to France and talk about his country, but to be honest, Niger was bleeding. The economy was in shambles. And if you look at Niger, a percentage of its GDP came from international support. So I wonder what the president was doing in the country. So all of these things metamorphosized to something else, and the population started feeling the pressure. And in the continent of Africa, the military, to an extent, they are a little bit very close, I would say very, very close to the government. It's not like in other countries around the world where the military, it's an independent entity on its own and does not have anything to do with the running of the state. But in other countries, like in West Africa or across the continent, the military, to an extent, is very close to the government. The military is not independent to an extent. So in mostly the French system, the military makes a lot of decisions. So whereby the United States of America telling the country of Niger not to go closer to China, but to go closer to Russians, I think that was a fundamental problem that the US brought into the country, because news media was talking about that Russians were coming to engage Niger. And if you stop in a country like Niger not to go ahead and engage geopolitical partners, there is a problem in this. So that relationship all of a sudden turned sour. So the model of cooperation, the model of democracy internally wasn't really going well, because why? The US wanted Niger to work with them, just to work with the United States alone. And this is where the problem is. And this also goes with France, that always imposed to African nations, those in West Africa, to tell them, you gotta work with us, or if you work with someone else, then you are not going to the norm. So this is where the problem is. So a number of these African countries and governments, like I've said, do not have full control over their citizens. The colonial days were different, but nowadays, these countries have decided that they are going to start listening to their people. So this is a big problem, that the foreign geopolitical partners like the United States, the European Union, France, and others, India, China, and Russians, some of them do not understand. So this is where the problem is. So that particular sovereignty was at stake, and that's why that relationship never worked. There was a meeting that I think led everything to fall apart, where the Nigerian government was very furious that the United States went ahead to announce a meeting. There was a meeting that the Central Command of the United States General that was based in the Central Command that takes care of Africa, Middle East, and other parts across this particular region were to meet. Now, it's very common that you see a commanding general to come to the African nation to meet with the president. This has been some kind of, I'll call it as an abuse to an extent that anybody that comes to this country can meet with the president. But an African general cannot just travel to the United States and meet with Joe Biden, just like that. It's never going to happen. Not talk less of meeting someone in the Congress. So we've had instances in the geopolitical environment that has gone wrong because these geopolitical partners coming from Africa, they consider being underlooked, being undermined, and they are never listened to. So sending a U.S. CENTCOM commander to come to the country of Niger to meet with a president of the state, that I think is being the norm in the past. But I think Niger took it to a whole different level. Niger was like, no, this is never going to happen. You're going to meet the prime minister, and that is it. And that particular meeting, the U.S. went ahead to make that announcement without even informing the country of Niger. And that was a big problem. And the U.S. felt so comfortable to tell the Nigerian people that they were talking about the Russians, that the Chinese and other countries that were looking to engage Niger as if they were threats. So it goes back to the U.S. foreign policy in the continent of Africa. The U.S. stopped telling African countries who they should engage with, who they should work with. So if you temper that particular area, there will be always a clash. So the United States got so comfortable by just telling Niger who they should interact with, who they're going to work with. So this was a major problem in that relationship. On the surface level, it looks okay, but internally, there were a lot of problems. It's been written in geopolitical journals, geopolitical articles around the world, and experts have questioned why the United States will want to impose. And just allowing that the U.S. CENTCOM commander to go to Niger to meet with the president. The Nigerian government refused. That was never going to happen. And that got the United States furious. But to be honest, that's the way it should be, because in some geopolitical circles, United States of America classifies some African president to be at the level of the State Department. So this is the problem that is never talked about. And African governments are furious with this classification. So that relationship was never going to go anywhere anytime soon. When this particular thing happened, Niger came out pretty clear and said, we are not part of this thing, and the U.S. will not tell us how we're going to manage our partnership around the world and who we're going to meet, who we're going to talk to. So this was a major problem. And that's why Niger came out clear and informed the United States that we don't want you in this country. We want to end this partnership. We want to end this collaboration, and you should pick out your drone base. Remember, when there was a coup, when the coup was announced on television, what happened? The Secretary of State, Anthony Blinken, came out and lashed out to the country of Niger, informed them that nothing would happen. There was a number of threats coming out from the State Department, talking about that if Bazoum is not reinstated back to the government or take over the state again, then there will be consequences. I think goes back to the failure on understanding how these countries work. It goes back to the European Union as well. Went ahead to lash out on Niger and impose sanctions all of a sudden. These countries fail to understand when something like this happens, they just rush ahead to give sanctions. I think that's a wrong way to deal with African nations. It tells me that they have no clue on the cultural fundamentals, the engagement, the partnership, the collaboration, and the internal politics, the cultural problems, the historical challenges, and the colonialization that is behind why these countries are behaving this way. So the partners in the European Union and the US do not understand, and they don't want to listen on what's going on in those countries. And that's where they got it totally wrong. So when the coup took place in the country of Niger, the United States threatened and also cut down aid to the country. And the European Union did the same. A number of other geopolitical partners in Europe were talking about this particular issue. I think sometimes these countries have to be neutral. There is democracy. I understand they want Niger to continue democratic principle, but sometimes you got to keep quiet. Just listen on what is going on. Don't just rush ahead to give sanctions, because in doing so, it allows the military government to understand that, to tell their people that we told you that their goal was to make sure that they continue to control us. So you fail from that point of view. And the United States of America refused for quite some time to call what happened in Niger a coup, because according to the United States Constitution, or regarding some kind of a foreign policy arrangement, if the US would have recognized that it was a coup, the US have to withdraw and leave the country. But time goes on, and the US made some kind of arrangement in the background and also continue staying in the country. But the US, while France was leaving, they thought they have it all, but they went ahead to fumble and to go ahead with a geopolitical blunder to let the Nigerian government understand that you better work with us. If you don't work with us, this is the consequence. This is what's going to happen. And the junta, let me put it that way. Now, the general chairman said, we want to see what you were talking about, and we're going to run the country the way we want. And not even the European Union, not even the United States can threaten us in this country. So this was where things escalated to a whole different level. And Niger asked the US to leave the country and close down the drone base. The drone base was a huge investment. When I talk about 100 million US dollars here, I'm talking about a lot of money, right? For a country that is, to an extent, if the US, let's step back a second, if the US can really take $100 million and invest it in a country like Niger, considering its economy, like I said earlier, therefore means there was a reason why the US was there. It's not an easy investment. And for Niger to hold its grounds and tell the US to take out this, it means there's been a lot of commotion in the background. There's been a lot of misunderstanding. There's been a lot of imposition, paternalism, and talking down to the Nigerian government. And the US, to an extent, had no power at the time. So the US had no option but to leave the country. So simple. So this drone base did not accomplish its mission, did not accomplish why it was built. And for the United States of America to invest such an amount of money in Niger is to tell you how strategic Niger was in the region. But nobody talked about the importance of Niger until when things happened. So the US partners and the European partners and the Asian partners and whichever partner dealing with Niger got to understand that Niger is at the heart of the Sahel. It's the most important country in the Sahel. Keep its size apart. This country is where things happen in the Sahel, wherever they go. Until before Bazoum was shouting that he's been kidnapped, he's been put in house arrest and other things. No, there were underlying issues with France and the colonial history that we ignore at the time. What the United States should learn, I hope they have learned what happened in Niger, that this can happen to any other country. It doesn't matter if it's the Chinese or the Russians or the European Union partners, and France has learned the hard way in Niger. It's important that the US get to understand that this relationship that is building in the continent of Africa, these days are gone when the European partners and the Americans, and also including the Chinese or other countries, try to tell those governments in the continent who they should partner with, who they should engage with, who they should work with. This is the problem, because in the case of France, the old colonial arrangement does not reflect the current challenges that countries are facing, the economic problems, the social challenges, the investment problem, the developmental issues, AI, the rest, awful lot of other very important strategic issues that they see other countries partnering. So by just holding these countries in one particular fold that you're going to work with us or you work with the enemy. So this is where the problem will be. I hope the US has learned from what happened in Niger. That particular relationship in Niger was taken for granted. And nobody believed the country of Niger when the coup took place. Despite the threat from France, despite France insisting that the ambassador will stay in this country, but the Nigerian government, they knew what they were up to. It was beyond what France thought. It was beyond what the United States of America thought and the European Union thought. Because each time these African governments make decisions, they are being laughed at. They are being threatened with sanctions. They are being told something else. But I just want to understand, I hope that the partners have understood what's going on. These countries, they mean what they are saying. Each time they come and make an announcement, for example, the country of Ivory Coast has made an announcement. Other geopolitical partners say Ivory Coast is joking, is playing. No, it's a major announcement. When a country comes out and makes such a strategic move, it means something is going on in the background. So the United States of America must have learned the drone base in Algadez never served the purpose. American geopolitical analysts have questioned such a huge investment in the country of Niger. And it's more important to understand that in the future, in the coming years, if the US really want to work with African nations, it should be that of equal partnership. It should be that of understanding the cultural engagement. It should be that they should understand the colonialization and the power of the civil societies in those countries. So Algadez was a failure. The drone base did not meet its particular. It, of course, provides some intelligence. It provides some surveillance, some data information. But I think, from my understanding, there was always a risk because Niger never felt safe. They never knew what the US was looking up to. They never had no idea what the data the United States was gathering in the country. So whatever nation will be very concerned that a foreign superpower like the United States is stationed in your country and at night or whatever time they are surveilling the environment and they are looking across. So they may be looking at the Sahel, providing information to geopolitical partners. But again, no country will sit very comfortable to see that the United States of America is sniffing its nose everywhere around the region. So this is a big problem that the US never saw coming. But I think with the country of Niger coming out asking the US to leave, there's a clear indication that the drone base was first a threat to the country, even though they never said it. And secondly, their sovereignty was at stake. And thirdly, they never wanted their partners to tell them who they should work with. And that goes alongside other geopolitical partners. Hopefully, the United States of America should understand each time they want to engage African nations that they can't just impose their will on these nations. Those days are gone. That the African continent have decided that they want to diversify their partnership and work with every other government across the world to give them that leverage. This is important. The earlier geopolitical partners understand this, and France have learned it the hard way, and the United States has learned it the hard way. With the new US government coming in under Donald Trump, I think things will even escalate to an extent. We're going to have a video in regards to how African governments perceive Trump coming to power. We're going to dive into specifics there because there is a huge problem between the country of Eritrea and the United States of America with regards to their strategic engagement. Each time the Democrat comes to power, they sideline the country of Eritrea. And when the Republicans come to power, they embrace the country of Eritrea. Because Eritrea at the moment is very close to Russia and China. And this is a major concern for the United States of America. This is going to be a video for another day. But again, strategic relationship must be based on mutual respect, mutual collaboration, and mutual win-win situation. We want to thank you for watching. Leave us a comment. Let us know what you think in regards to the failures of the United States of America in the country of Niger and why you think the drone base in Algadez was a huge blunder. with regards to how the US perceives its relationship in the continent of Africa. We want to thank you for watching. I'll be looking forward to meeting you soon in our next episodes. Smash the like button, share the video with your different network. We are looking forward to talking on more strategic issues in 2025. Thank you for now and have a good day. Bye-bye.